There's a kill switch built into every empire. Not foreign armies, not natural disasters, not revolutions. It's something far more insidious, something that happens from the inside, something that's happened 4 times in recorded history, the exact same way to the 4 most powerful empires ever to exist. And every single time, the people in charge swore they were different. Rome controlled 3 continents for 5 centuries: Europe, Asia, and Africa. They believed their power was eternal. In 1500, Spain controlled more gold and silver than all of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined. They literally didn't know what to do with it all. 50 years later, they were bankrupt. How do you go broke with infinite money? Spain found a way. Britain ruled a quarter of the planet. They called their empire the one on which the sun never sets. Britain controlled so much territory that at any given moment, it was daytime somewhere under British rule. All 3 made the same fatal mistake. All 3 activated the same kill switch, and all 3 collapsed, not over centuries, but in a single generation. Right now, in 2025, America is following that exact blueprint, step by step, warning sign by warning sign. The only question is, how close are we to the end? Here's what nobody tells you about empires. They don't fall because they're weak. They fall because they become too expensive to maintain. Every dominant power in history faced the same impossible math. Expansion costs more than extraction generates. Military commitments grow faster than tax revenue. And eventually, the gap becomes a chasm. When that happens, empires face a choice: cut spending, shrink commitments, accept decline, or keep spending and pay for it by destroying your own currency. Guess which option they always choose? Because here's the thing. Politicians don't get reelected by telling people the party's over. They get reelected by promising everything will be fine, by printing more money, by pretending the old rules don't apply. For a while, it works until suddenly, catastrophically, it doesn't. Let's start with Rome. 211 BC, the denarius is introduced, a silver coin containing 4.5 grams of pure metal. It's brilliant. It's trusted. You can use it from Britannia to Egypt, and everyone knows exactly what it's worth. For 3 centuries, Rome dominates because their money is real. But here's what happens when you conquer the known world. It's expensive. More legions, more roads, more administration, more grain subsidies for the mob in Rome. By the time Emperor Nero takes power in 54 AD, the empire is spending more than it earns. So Nero does something clever and catastrophic. He orders the mints to reduce the silver content from 100% to 90%. Same coin, same face, 10% less value. He just created 11 coins from the silver that used to make 10. That extra one, profit for the emperor, and nobody notices at first. But once you start, you can't stop. By 211 AD, the denarius is 50% silver, half real, half worthless base metal. By 265 AD, just 54 years later, only 5% silver. A coin that was once pure is now 95% fraud, a thin silver coating over worthless metal. Imagine you're a Roman soldier in 265 AD. You're paid 300 denarii per year, same as your great-grandfather, except your great-grandfather's coins were real. Yours are theatrical props. What cost 1 denarii in 200 AD now costs 50. Your salary hasn't changed, but you're 50 times poorer. Farmers stop selling food for coins. They demand barter, grain for tools, wine for cloth. Soldiers refuse to fight unless paid in gold, which the empire no longer has. Tax collectors can't collect taxes because the currency is a joke. The entire economic system seizes. And here's the part that should terrify you. Rome's military was still strong. The legions could still win battles. The borders were defended, but it didn't matter because when your money dies, so does your empire. By 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire is gone. Not conquered, bankrupt. The pattern emerges: military overextension, deficit spending, currency debasement, inflation, systemic collapse. Remember that sequence. You're going to see it again. Fast forward to 1545, Potosi, Bolivia. The Spanish conquistadors discover a mountain of silver, the richest ore deposit ever found. For the next century, Potosi produces half the world's silver. Ships haul it across the Atlantic by the ton. Spain becomes the richest empire on earth. The Spanish dollar becomes the first global currency. And you'd think, problem solved, right? You've got unlimited money. Wrong. Because here's the paradox. More money doesn't make you richer if everyone has more money. Spain floods Europe with silver. And what happens when you flood a market with money? Prices explode. What cost 1 silver coin in 1500 costs 10 coins by 1600. Your money hasn't become less pure, there's just vastly more of it. That's the inflation trap, and Spain walks right into it. But it gets worse. Spain isn't producing anything. They're not building industries. They're not innovating. They're just extracting wealth and spending it on wars, palaces, and luxury imports. The silver flows in from the Americas and flows right back out to France, England, Holland to buy things Spain doesn't make. Meanwhile, King Philip II inherits 36 million ducats of debt from his father, and rather than cut spending, he borrows more, fights the Ottomans, fights Protestant rebels, sends the Spanish Armada against England, and when the debt becomes unpayable, 1557, Philip declares bankruptcy. Sovereign default number 1, 1560, default number 2, 1575, default number 3, 1596, default number 4. 4 bankruptcies in 40 years, despite controlling half the world's silver. Why? Because debt doesn't care how rich you look. Each default destroys trust. Lenders refuse to lend. Interest rates skyrocket. And Spain responds by debasing the currency, issuing copper coins worth as much as silver coins. Nobody believes it. By 1648, Spain signs the Peace of Westphalia, marking the beginning of the end. By 1700, the empire is functionally over. The pattern again: resource wealth, overspending, borrowing, defaults, currency debasement, inflation, imperial collapse. Spain proved that even infinite resources can't save you from fiscal suicide.
The British Empire governs 458 million people. 1/4 of humanity, 1/4 of Earth's landmass. The pound sterling is the world's reserve currency. 60% of global trade is invoiced in pounds. The gold standard anchors everything. 1 pound equals a fixed amount of gold. Stability, trust, power. Britain seems invincible, but empires run on credit, and credit demands repayment. Then comes World War I. In 1914, Britain's national debt, £650 million. In 1919, after 4 years of industrial slaughter, $7.4 billion. Tenfold increase in 5 years. To fund the war, Britain borrowed from everyone: its citizens, the Americans, anyone with money. And critically, they suspended the gold standard. You can't print unlimited money and back it with gold. You have to choose. Britain chose to print. After the war, Winston Churchill, then Chancellor, makes a catastrophic decision: return to gold at the pre-war exchange rate. This overvalues the pound. British exports become uncompetitive. Unemployment explodes. By 1931, Britain is forced off gold again, permanently. The pound is devalued. Trust begins to crack. Then World War II finishes the job. By 1945, Britain's debt hits 270% of GDP. The empire has bankrupted itself to survive. And in 1944, while the war still rages, the Bretton Woods Conference redesigns the global financial system. The pound is officially replaced as the world reserve currency. The dollar takes the throne. What follows is a humiliating collapse. 1947, Britain tries to make the pound freely convertible to the US dollar. The experiment lasts 6 weeks before a currency crisis forces them to stop. 1949, pound devalued by 30%. 1967, devalued again. Meanwhile, the empire disintegrates. India gains independence in 1947, signaling the beginning of Britain's retreat from global dominance. Then in 1956 comes the Suez Crisis, the moment Britain learns, brutally, that it is no longer a superpower. Colony after colony breaks away, not because they're conquered, but because Britain can't afford them anymore. By the 1970s, inflation hits 25%. Britain goes begging to the IMF for a bailout. The empire that ruled the world for 2 centuries is gone in 30 years. Not defeated, broke. The pattern once more: war debt, currency debasement, loss of reserve status, devaluation, inflation, imperial collapse. Which brings us to now. 1944, Bretton Woods makes the dollar the global reserve currency. It's backed by gold at $35 per ounce. The dollar is as good as gold. But just like Rome, just like Britain, America starts spending beyond its means. Vietnam War, Great Society programs, 800 military bases worldwide. By the 1960s, foreign governments notice America is printing more dollars than it has gold. France's Charles de Gaulle starts demanding gold for dollars. Others follow. August 15, 1971. President Nixon closes the gold window. No more gold backing. The dollar becomes pure fiat, backed by nothing but a promise. At first, it's fine. The petrodollar system creates artificial demand, as oil is priced primarily in dollars globally. But the spending never stops. 1980, U.S. debt, $900 billion. 2000, $5.6 trillion. 2020, $27 trillion. 2025, over $36 trillion. A 40-fold increase in 45 years and accelerating. But debt is only half the story. Since 2008, the Federal Reserve has created trillions from nothing. Quantitative easing, they call it. During COVID alone, over $4 trillion printed in 2 years. More money created than in the previous century combined. And just like every empire before, they told us it wouldn't cause inflation. They're different. Modern economics has solved this. They're not different. Inflation hit 9% in 2022. Real inflation, food, housing, healthcare, is far higher. The dollar is being debased, slowly at first, but the pattern always accelerates. And just like Britain, America is losing reserve status. 2000, 70% of global reserves held in dollars. 2025, 58% and falling. BRICS nations are building alternatives, trading in local currencies, buying gold, preparing for the dollar to fall. The world sees what's coming. Let's lay it out, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Stage 1, dominance. The empire peaks. Military strength, economic power, currency backed by something real. Stage 2, overextension. The empire expands beyond its means. More territory, more commitments, more promises. Stage 3, deficit spending. The empire spends more than it earns. At first manageable, then structural, then permanent. Stage 4, currency debasement. Can't borrow enough, can't tax enough, so they debase the currency. Stage 5, inflation. More currency, same goods, prices explode, savings evaporate. Stage 6, loss of confidence. People and nations lose faith, demand alternatives, flee the currency. Stage 7, collapse. The system fails. The empire can't fund itself, can't maintain control, falls. Here's what makes this different from every previous collapse. Rome, Spain, Britain, those were regional empires. The dollar is the global reserve currency. When Rome fell, it affected Rome. When the dollar falls, it affects everyone. Every central bank, every trade agreement, every market. The interconnected global economy amplifies the chaos exponentially. But the pattern says it's coming. Not prediction, precedent. 4 empires, 4 currency collapses, 4 identical sequences. The math of empire is unforgiving. You can delay it, deny it, but you cannot avoid it. Rome debased its currency. The denarius died. The empire fell. Spain flooded the world with silver. Inflation destroyed its wealth. The empire declined. And Britain borrowed to fight 2 wars. The pound collapsed, the empire dissolved. And now America prints trillions, runs endless deficits, and believes it's different. The pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism, about military strength, about technology. The pattern is economic, and economic laws are as absolute as gravity. You cannot print wealth. You cannot borrow forever. And you cannot debase your currency without destroying your empire. How long until stage 6? How long until the world loses confidence in the dollar? How long until America joins Rome, Spain, and Britain in the history books? The debt says we're close. The money printing says we're close. And history, which has watched this exact sequence 4 times before, says the ending is inevitable. The only variables, how fast and how painful. If you want to understand what happens next, Subscribe, because when the pattern completes, you'll need to know why. History doesn't repeat, but it sure as hell rhymes. And this rhyme, we've heard it 3 times before.